Hall for Spectation Sports. Speaking with Jojo Giannetti once again, getting a health update. Obviously, Cage Titans 58 is a couple of weeks behind us, and I know, like literally, day of weigh-ins, your body, even though you wanted to fight, your body had other plans. So, Joe, first of all, how you doing?
I'm doing a lot better now. My body feels good, just taking it one day at a time. My stomach's pain free. It's just like super randomly, I'll get nauseous some days. Today's been pretty good. So day by day, better and better.
I know you had put up an Instagram video to kind of let folks know what happened when it happened, which was to me was crazy because you looked like you were hurting as you were making the video, especially with what you went through. For folks that didn't see it, can you just take us through what happened? Um, kind of, I hate to make you repeat what you said, but just for folks that didn't see that, just let folks know how the events that unfolded as you were about to get to your fight.
Yeah, for sure. So I did a couple interviews the week of the fight, and I was like probably 1 or 2 pounds heavier than where I normally am when I'm cutting weight, but I was like, whatever, no sweat. And we went through fight week like usual, felt fine, didn't feel like any more drained than usual. It was just like, okay, we're gonna start a couple pounds heavier and we'll kill it, which we were. Um, we started doing the weight cut and everything was going great. As great as a weight cut can go. It's never a fun time.
Mhm.
But we were doing it, and then I did like probably a solid hour and a half of I jumped in the sauna, got a good sweat, and then I put a sauna suit on. I went on the bike, did that whole shebang. Went in the sauna a little longer, came out, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna take a little break, and then we'll jump back in. And these were like there was a couple warning signs that I probably should have stopped, but I'm Italian, so I'm just stubborn as hell. So I was sitting there taking a break, and sometimes your stomach it feels like a little crampy, almost like tight. And I
Mhm.
was like, all right, I'm not feeling the greatest, but I was taking a break, so it was like perfect timing. 15, 20 minutes, my body will reset. And we were sitting there, and I started dry heaving a little bit, and I was like, all right, whatever, like because that's happened before. And then I threw up a little bit of stomach bile, and like we jokingly were like, all right, less you have to sweat, like something came out, haha.
Mm.
And then a couple minutes later, I threw up again, and it was stomach bile, and there was like some blood in it. And like I didn't show it on my face, but like I laughed to my coach, and I was like, he's like, anything come up? And I was like, oh yeah, a little blood, haha.
Mm.
And we kind of like lightheartedly were like joking about it, but he told me the next day, he's like, I wish I just pulled you from the fight as soon as that happened. But
Mm.
so what we did after that is he was like, all right, your body's probably just a little beat up from the cut, so we're gonna go home, go sleep for like 4 or 5 hours, and then we'll come back. So that's what we did. I went back to the sauna around like probably like 4 or 5 in the morning. Got back to work, same thing, threw some sweet sweat on, got in the sauna, broke a sweat like that, started sweating. Did my intervals, weight was coming off. We got I think we got within like a pound and a half. And then, time was getting close. So I was like, all right, so what we're going to do is we'll go down to weigh-ins. We'll weigh in. We won't be on weight yet. And then we'll come back to the sauna and we'll sweat the rest out.
Mm.
We go down, we're not on weight yet. The the commissioner was like, all right, you get an hour. I was like, all right, I'll see you later. We go down to a different sauna because it was closer to the hall, and we start cutting and stuff, sweating. And then towards the end, I went from like sweating to just like dead stop. And I was
Mm.
like, and I realized it too because I scraped the sweat off because I was like, oh, I'm killing it, like I'm doing fine. And I scraped it off, and then nothing else happened, and I was like, oh, maybe I haven't been sweating. Like maybe this is just sweat sitting there.
Mm.
So we go back to the weigh-ins and going to check because the scale at this sauna, they didn't have like a working scale. So I was like, we're just going to sweat as long as we need to and show up to weigh-ins. We get to the weigh-ins, and my girlfriend puts the car in park, and we're in the parking lot, and it was like instant. As soon as she puts it in park, I felt like my nose was running. So I like
Mm.
wiped my nose, and there was a little bit of blood, and I was like, oh, that's weird. So I grabbed the tissue, and I like kind of got in there, and the tissue was covered in blood. Next thing you know, my nose is leaking,
Mm.
and I don't get nosebleeds. Anybody else like, oh, that happens, whatever, it's dry in the sauna. No matter what, even in a fight, I don't get nosebleeds. So I was, in hindsight, it was kind of funny, like between me and my girlfriend. I felt like a little kid. I just had like a tissue covered in blood, and I looked up at her, and I was like, what do I do? And she was like, you don't get nosebleeds. I was like, I know. What do I do? And once again, I was like being lighthearted. I was like, all right, we'll bleed out whatever we need to make the weight. And we go into the weigh-ins, and the doctor is looking at us, and I'm still like a little, not as much, a little bit of blood, and he's just kind of looking at me, and they didn't like it. And
Mm.
then probably 5 minutes later, if that, like, we were kind of at like a weird place, and then all of a sudden my body just like was like no, and I like ran to my like I didn't have anything near me, so I ran to my gym bag. I started throwing up like bile and blood in my bag.
Oh wow.
I got cold shakes, and like, because I'm coming out of a sauna, so I'm hot, but all of a sudden I'm shivering, and I
Yeah.
was like, is it cold in here? And everybody's like, no, not that cold. And I was like, I'm freezing, like I need a jacket. So like I got people laying their jackets on me like blankets, and
Mm.
then everybody's trying to figure out what's going on, and they're like, no, you're not fighting. And I was like, okay. And all of a sudden a couple people leave the room, and I was like, I gotta go. I'm running to the bathroom. Now I'm destroying that thing. I was like, what is going on with my body? Like, I don't
Mm.
like, I've had like some tougher cuts. I've had cuts where like I feel like I'm dying, but like before this all happened, I didn't feel any worse than any other cut. And then all of a sudden my body just shut down, and I was like,
Mm.
and my girlfriend ran out of the room. She just happened to be on the phone, and I texted her because like I couldn't even speak because I was afraid to throw up again. So I just texted her. I was like, we have to go now. And so she
Mm.
hung up the phone, ran back in, and she was like, grab your stuff, let's go. We went to the ER, and they ended up giving me 2 IV bags, and they ended up doing whatever they had to do. And it turned out I had a stomach ulcer. And
Mm.
at first they were like, it's an ulcer. And I gave them a weird look, like, an ulcer? Like, how the hell is that happening? They were like, have you ever had one? And I was like, yeah, like 8 years ago.
Mm.
Um, I used to drink way too much coffee. So I was working overnights, training twice a day. So in between everything was like, oh, stop and get a coffee, stop and get a coffee. And it wasn't like it wasn't black coffee like I used to drink now. Like it
Mm.
was like extra large or large, like extra cream, extra sugar, like the worst coffee you could get, barely coffee.
Mm.
And so I got an ulcer from that, which made sense. But now I learned that apparently those don't just heal and go away; they scar over.
Mm.
So whether stress or whatever, something happened and it irritated it, and the weight cut on top of it was just too much. So I
Mm.
have an ulcer. And they were like, if you had fought or if you had done any more cutting, like you could have done permanent damage to your body. You would never fight at 55 again.
Oh
You
wow.
like you could have done some like if you fight again, you would never fight at 55. And I was like I was that close, huh? And they were like, you're right on the line of like never being able to make that weight again. Like your body just wouldn't allow it.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then, I kind of like gave them the whole rundown. I was like, I have been super active lately. Like I've been fighting a lot. And and I told them I said this to my girlfriend afterwards too. Like the weirdest part, the whole way through camp, there was something off. And I don't know what it was. My body felt fine, camp, whatever. It was just another camp. But like in the back of my head, like I didn't feel run down, but like in the back of my head, I had a feeling like my body was like, we're tired,
Mm.
and I couldn't explain it, and I felt like something bad was going to happen. I didn't think I was going to lose the fight, but all camp I was like, something bad is going to happen. And then we're like at the weigh-in, so I'm like, oh, we're in the clear, just go fight. And then within minutes it all went downhill, and I was
Mm.
just like, I was devastated. I was a mess. Like, and the doctors are all like giving me IVs, and they're like, oh, you look so much, like even right after getting the IVs, they're like, you look so much better. Like I was still super sucked out, but my face
Mhm.
had color to it. um and it was just like, it was devastating, man. Like,
Yeah.
and when I had posted that video on Instagram, like you said, like I still kind of looked out of it. That was more like, wasn't like physical pain. That was more just like mentally. I was just like, I
Mm.
still am bummed, but like right in that moment,
Yeah.
like I was just so bummed and like just down in the dumps. Like it sucks.
Yeah. No, it does, and I could tell. I could actually tell that when you made that post. Because I mean, with all the interviews I've done and fighters I talked to, and no, I have an idea of at least like the energy, all the energy with your personal life, your fun, financial stuff, everything that you put into a fight camp just to get to the one night, and then when that happens, when it happened for you especially, I can tell that could be really disheartening. Um, um, when it happened, was your opponent, and like how did Vendrimi take it? How did Cage Titan? I imagine Cage Titans, that you have a relationship with them. I'm sure they were
Yeah.
understood.
Well, they were kind of, it was funny because, like, not funny, but it was like in the moment, like none of us knew what was going on.
Mm.
So it was just like, I didn't even really get a chance to tell them what was going on. Like, we knew I wasn't fighting. We knew something wasn't right. And then we like ran out of the weigh-ins, and like
Mm.
told somebody from Cage Titans, they were like, "Where are you headed?" And I was, "I'm going to the ER. I gotta go." And they were like, "The ER," and I couldn't talk much because I was afraid I was gonna throw up. So I was like, just like figure it out, talk to somebody. Like I know somebody else knows, talk to them, and we literally just like ran out.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, man, it was just like it still sucks, but it's like, and I said to the doctors, I said to my friends and family and stuff, like you don't want it to happen, but like I almost wish it would have happened weeks before the fight because then
Mm.
it's like, the fight's off and I don't have to put my body through all this and like the financials and all that stuff. But like
Mhm.
we were at the home stretch, like we're at the weigh-ins, like we just got to
Yeah.
weigh in and fight, and then we're in it.
Yeah.
Everything else is done. I went through the entire weight cut. I went through the entire fight camp. I did my hard rounds. I did all my cardio. I did all my strength and conditioning. And the only thing left to do was to step on the scale and go fight. And and my body was just like, we can't do it. And
Mm.
that's the worst part. It wasn't like, and especially now, it's like a different type of frustrating because like, though I do feel much better, like, and I don't feel 100%, but I feel like I could go train. You know what I mean? So I'm
Yeah.
like, it sucks that a week and a half ago, I'm on my deathbed and I can't fight. And then,
Mm.
even the next day at Cage Titans, like I was still super uncomfortable. Like I couldn't sit still all night. Like I was like moving because my stomach was all upset. But
Mhm.
I'm not throwing up. I'm not bleeding out my nose. So it's like, it sucks to not fight and then be there in a much healthier state. It's like,
Mm.
I almost wish like I broke my arm or my legs, and then it's like I can't fight. Look at it, but like you look at me and you're like, why can't you fight? And I'm like, tell me about it.
Mm. I mean, when you think of that you kind of like when you say ask that question of yourself. I mean, I know it was like a kind of a big event for Cage Titans. I know Dana White was in town. I saw the picture. You post a picture with him up and stuff. And when we had talked, you had talked about the UFC coming to Boston, and then more of that came up that week. I mean, do you think maybe there was some anxiety with all that extra going on around you for your fight that might have contributed to kind of like making your ulcer come back?
Definitely. And it was funny because one of my coaches at AK, that was the first thing he said. He's like, you think the stress did it? And I was
Mm.
like, maybe, but like, I get anxious and I get stressed for sure, especially during camp and fight week and all that stuff. Um, and if it was, there must have been something like that plus the weight cut because like I said, I didn't feel like I was hurting more during the weight cut than ever before. I didn't feel more stressed or anxious than ever before. It was normal levels of like, oh, I feel like shit while I'm cutting
Mm-hmm.
weight. And it was like normal levels of stress and normal levels of anxiety. So that's what was kind of like threw me all off. I was like, nothing felt out of whack. And then it
Mm-hmm.
just was. And
Mm.
then, just like the realization of like, you know, obviously there's no guarantees in life, but many people were kind of claiming like, if Joe wins this fight, the UFC is going to call. And maybe they would have, who knows? But it's like, that's how I went into fight camp. Like I wasn't working that whole time. I sold my car. I got sponsorships. I went out there. I'm away from my family. I just moved into this apartment. And then like a week later, I was in California. Like
Mm.
I just finished unpacking my apartment like the other day. Um, and so it was like, I kind of went through everything, sacrificed everything, and ended up with, I don't want to say nothing, but just about nothing. Like I
Yeah.
gave everything for that camp. Um, so it's like now we're kind of not starting from square one, but we're definitely starting behind the starting line. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the only bright side about like this timetable of getting healthy is like I can use that time to save money and get ready for the next fight camp and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I mean, you have to, especially yourself as a martial artist, as a competitor, when things like this happen in life, you got to take the lesson from what happens to you. So for you, like, I mean, the lesson, what do you take from this? Do you mean do you consider changing weight classes, or is 55 an issue for you now? Like, what did you learn from the experience?
I mean, honestly, I don't think 55 is a problem. I
Mm-hmm.
weighed in under 55 2 months ago.
Mm.
And that cut was a breeze. I did 2 pounds less than I was aiming to do for this last cut. And I was like, I walked into weigh-ins like, all right, let's go. Let's get on the scale full of energy. Um, I mean, if anything, it's just use this time to get my weight closer so
Mm-hmm.
that when I'm in fight camp, it's not so much of just like preparing and getting your weight down. It's just preparing and lose a couple pounds, and
Mm-hmm.
then and I've cut a lot of weight and I've cut a little bit of weight. And it's honestly just like wherever my weight ends up at. Like I'm eating good throughout camp. Like I'm doing what all the necessary things. my body's just weird. Sometimes it's like, all right, we're going to do a 7-pound cut. And then some fights, it's like, all right, we're going to do a 10-pound cut. And like, I'll make weight with both. So I'm like, whatever, it is what it is. But now it's just being more conscious of like, all right, you've got 7 weeks until you plan on fighting again. So that means you've got just under 7 weeks to be at, I don't know, 164 instead of being at 168. So the goal would just be like keep my strength up, but be much lighter heading into fight camp, and make sure I can do whatever I have to do to be much lighter heading into the sauna. And if I don't think it would happen, but God forbid, 2, 3, 4, 5 fights down the road, if my body kind of rejects the weight cut, then we'll sit down and we'll be like, all right, maybe it's time. Because I've told people that I can see for sure before the end of my career, I'll end up as a permanent move to welterweight. But I do think I have plenty of time left at lightweight. And when I do decide to move up to welterweight, I'm going to do it the right way. Like I see plenty of these guys, not just 55ers to 70, but a bunch of weight classes. They go, okay, I'm going up in weight, and they just cut less weight. That's not going up in weight. That's cutting less weight. I tell people all the time, if I were to go up to welterweight, I would take a year off of competing, and I would become a welterweight. I would improve my muscle capacity. I would compete and improve my strength and my conditioning, my sport specific conditioning. And so that way, when, I weigh in at 170, I look like I belong at 170, not a 55er that just cut a couple less pounds.
Yeah. I mean, again, for somebody that's so young, you obviously kind of have the knowledge for a mature fighter at the professional level. You always seem to have that through you, especially coming out of the Ultimate Fighter. You make me think of with the thing about you said taking off a year, like that's what John Jones did, and look at how well it worked out for him. So I think you got the right idea there. Did they give you like a timetable though, as far as like when you're going to be allowed to fight again, or is that kind of like up to how you feel?
So it's more so up to how I feel. So the doctors at the ER told me, they gave me, I forget what it was called. They gave me some meds for my stomach, and they said, finish these and the ulcer will be just about good as long as you're sticking to your diet. Because I don't know if you know, when you have an ulcer, that also means you're going to have a boring diet for the next 3 or so weeks. So it's like,
Kinda, yeah.
you can't eat anything with seasoning. You can't eat anything hot. You can't eat anything too cold. My first thought was like, I'll just go get a chicken Caesar wrap from the restaurant down the street. You can't have Caesar dressing. Like certain ingredients are just like too acidic. Like I got a turkey club and it had tomatoes on it. Like, nope, tomatoes are acidic. Take that out. So like everything I'm eating is flavorless.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got no flavor right now. I feel like I'm back in camp, and I've been smashing water, and I'm like, this is fight camp all over again.
Wow.
But I'm hoping, I'm gonna finish these meds in a couple days. They're almost gone. And then, so I actually also have a staph infection, or had, and they couldn't give me antibiotics because that would mess with the ulcer. So they had to clean it out, which like I've never had a staph infection to the point where like they had to clean it out. So they cleaned it out and like basically were like getting whatever part of the infection out, and it's cleaned up and healed up pretty nice. So I'm going to have to get a couple days worth of meds for that once I'm done with these meds. But I'm hoping, so my plan is Monday to just, go to the gym, to be in the gym, just to get back in my routine, just be there. And then the following week, if I do the antibiotics for the staph and I'm good with my stomach, get back in the gym and just get back to drilling, and then full time. I went for my first run the other day and my calves are so sore. And it's crazy because it's only been a couple of weeks, but I think it's just from being so active, like at AKA to nothing. Like I cold turkey, no training, and like it's been driving me crazy. So I went for a run yesterday and I'm so sore.
Yeah. I mean, what's that old saying? It takes forever to get into shape and only 1 week to get out of shape. So
Oh, it's terrible. I never believed it until I got home last night or the other night, and I was like, my calves are so tight. But yeah, I'm hoping for the summertime to make my return. It's, the biggest thing for me is it's making sure my body's 100% healthy. When I get back into my next fight camp, I don't want that lingering feeling in my head. Like, is my body okay? Like, are we going to make it through in one piece? Cause like I said, this last camp, I had something, I don't know what it was, but I had that weird feeling that something wasn't right and I couldn't nail it. So I want to make sure that's gone. I want to make sure I'm going into camp healthy. I'm going into camp light. And then, like I said, I gotta get back to work and save up financially to make fight camp happen. Like
Hmm.
the fight camps are so expensive, and that's why, I've been pretty active, and people say I'm crazy when I say this all the time, but I would have loved to have been more active. Um, but, it's quality over quantity. I can't afford to go to AKA every 2 months, every month. So that's why, like, I've been active, but not as active as I'd like,
Mm.
because these camps cost so much. So it's, like I said, quality over quantity, so the next camp is going to be a good one. I'm going to make sure that I'm stress free. So my bills are paid for, my camps are paid for. And then as soon as that's a possibility, I'm going to be getting back in the cage ASAP. So summertime.
Yeah, I mean, summer scene feels like it's right around the corner. Last question, and I mean, I'm not trying to add to any more stress or whatever, but because the rumor floating around for the UFC coming to your area is August.
hmm
Does that, if I mean, and they always like to put some local guys on the card, and you're rubbing elbows with the boss. Do you think any of this affects any of that happening, or?
I mean, it could. I've had. It's funny because I've had. I don't want to say the pessimist, but I've had like
Mm,
both sides of the fence like thrown at me. My buddies and other people that are like that like me as a fighter have
mm-hmm,
been like, dude, everything happens for a reason. Like maybe, and this is before we found out about August in Boston. Like maybe the
mm-hmm,
UFC will come calling now. Like it just wasn't meant to be. Da da da. Da. I'm like, maybe that sounds like more of a perfect world than like, you know
mm-hmm,
what I mean? And I've had other people that are like, dude, the UFC might be a little bummed that like you didn't fight against a vet and, it was kind of like a really hyped up fight. And I'm like, maybe, but like I did everything and my body gave out. So, if somebody in the UFC didn't like it, it is what it is. I did
mm-hmm,
everything in my power. There's nothing I could have done more. So, and I've also had other people that are like, oh, so you're going to like wait it out and wait and see what happens
mm-hmm,
if they call you for August. And I'm like, absolutely not. And they're like, what do you
mm,
mean? It's like, I'm on a 5-fight win streak and I'm a fighter. Like,
yeah,
I say it to people all the time, and it's not to praise me or excuse any of my mistakes, but like take all my success, all my mistakes, take it out of it. The one thing that I'm always here to do is to fight. I'm here to
mm-hmm,
fight, here to stay active, and I'm here to get finishes. I'm not here to get these decisions. I'm not here to say I'm a fighter and fight once a year.
mm-hmm,
So like I said, if I can get a fight in July and then, crank out that win and then they come around in August and they're like, hey, you're on a 6-fight win streak. You just fought 4 weeks ago. You want to fight in Boston? I'm going to say yeah. So I'm planning for July, and then Dana, you can give me a call in August. Um, we're gonna sell it out, bro. We're gonna sell the garden out so fast.
yeah. I mean, I'll keep my fingers crossed for you for that, because again, it's unfortunate what happened, but the timeline's just like it also does seem kind of perfect. So, well, I mean, that's it for me, Joe. I mean, again, I mean, if there's anything you want to shout out or anyone you want to shout out before we close up the interview, by all means, the floor is yours.
I just want to say thank you to everybody that bought the pay-per-view for Cage Titans with my code still. I get a kickback from that. I appreciate it. Everybody that bought tickets from me and still went to the show. There was actually so many of my fans still at Cage Titans. You guys are the best. I appreciate it. I'm sorry I didn't make it to fight night. All of my sponsors, I didn't get to fully represent them with my shorts and my banner and all the cool fight pics and videos that come out afterwards. But, Caged In with Chris, Pear Tree Property Service, Verita Builders, Two Fight Bros. You guys are all awesome, and these fight camps are impossible without you guys. Everybody that buys merch, it helps out so much. And we didn't make it to the cage this time, but I did not. That stuff's not going unseen. I'm super thankful, and it's the only reason that these fight camps are able to happen. So thank you guys. The next one will be the best one, and we will make it to fight night and put on a hell of a show.
All right, cool. Thank you. Thanks again for making time, Joe.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much.